Rae Jepsen's new album is called The Loneliest Time. It is nothing but an absolute pleasure when I get to say, and I can't believe I got to say it a few times now, that Rae Jepsen joins me now in the studio. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
So nice to see you. Oh, you don't age. I was just thinking, you look handsomer and handsomer.
Get out of here.
No, truly.
Get out of here.
It.
That's because they replaced me. Yeah, in the middle of the pandemic, they were hoping nobody noticed. They brought in Colin Hanks.
I'm a very gullible person. For a hot minute, I was like, oh God, wrong guy.
I hope you're not gullible enough to think that I'm Colin Hanks. Carly, it's so nice to see you.
Lovely to see you.
I love the record.
Oh, thank you.
It's an interesting record, though. I want to talk a little bit about it. It's called For the Loneliest Time. I feel like every single time I talk to you, you're on a tour surrounded by thousands of people all the time, and then everything kind of stops. And I'm guessing that was the loneliest time.
Yeah, I mean, the Loneliest Time album theme was, quite on the nose, about what COVID was like for all of us, for kind of being isolated in that time. But I think loneliness itself has been a theme that I've been curious about getting into and exploring for my whole life.
Loneliness is a theme that you've been curious about?
Yeah, because I think that, how do I say this? I think that as a touring artist, you really have to kind of figure out what your relationship with loneliness looks like and be comfortable with it. And for me, I was really scared of my loneliness for a long time. But just because you're on the road and touring and getting to be in front of, stages of people, at the very end of the night, you're always kind of alone in this hotel room. And that adjustment period is hard. Yeah.
Right. Because what you're saying is that you're not... When you're not on the road, like someone like me who doesn't tour, I go home to the same house every night, to the same cats every night, and I have friends I can go see, but even though it seems like you are surrounded by people all the time, you're actually by yourself.
But I don't think it is just touring artists that go through this. I think that every human being kind of battles with loneliness to a degree in their life. And it's a fascinating thing because it does cause these extreme reactions. I think I talk a lot about that with this album is I don't look at it. It sounds like a little bit of a downer title, I'm aware. But I think it can cause real growth. And it can make you do really extreme things. And I wanted to kind of have an album that got to tap in on what those extreme different reactions to loneliness looked like. And some of those are really joyful and really brave. And some of those are more introspective and serious. But to me, I think I love anything that causes an extreme reaction. I think love does that. And I think loneliness does that as well.
Help me understand that a little bit more. So you've been wanting to explore loneliness in your music for a really, really long time. We'll talk about this a little bit later. I think a lot of your songs up to this point have been like really interested in the dynamics of relationships and all that stuff. Why was now the moment?
Because it was so illuminated and highlighted in the last couple of years. I think everything stopped. At first, even people like Jack Antonoff and I were calling each other sort of being like, I don't think we would have stopped had the world not stopped. We were just go, go, go type of what's the next tour, what's the next album, what's the next thing. So to kind of be put a pause, a forced pause and everything was at first a little relieving actually, but then it's slightly terrifying. Just be like, what do I do with this time? I was really excited to create, but the way I created changed because we weren't doing these in-person, like kind of like writing weeks with different people or kind of getting to travel to the same extent. So my life really quickly, just like everyone's did, had to kind of adjust. And
what did that look like, the adjustment?
Well, I think there were some cool breakthroughs in there, and there were some really hard parts. I think one of the hardest parts, we'll start there and end on the positive, but one of the hard things was being away from my family. Well, we had kind of gone through just, some grief with just losing people, like a family member. Yeah, and not being able to be there, I think, was really hard. And that was like my first experience, I think, of really kind of going through, a close family member being taken away from me and not being close to my mom or the people who would be normally surrounded in that experience.
You're saying that because you're in LA and they're in BC, and the travel wasn't easy then.
We literally weren't allowed to get to each other during that time. So that was very hard, and I think that kind of experience, I drew a lot of journaling from that, and then also some music as well. I think Ben's from the album is a little bit to do with one of the challenges with not being able to totally put to words what going through an experience of losing a family member was, but also I think that Surrender My Heart does that as well, and a little bit with Western Wind too. So it kind of bleeds its way through the album. But I think some of the positives were, I mean, I got some really weird hobbies. I learned how to make some really ugly scarves. If you want one, I have many.
I would love one.
Yeah, no.
you found yourself doing stuff that, I mean, you've been on the treadmill for a long time. So you found yourself able to do some stuff that wasn't music.
I found myself doing some stuff that I never thought I would do. I also, briefly joined a dating app, which led to Beach House. I can see the future, say it like you mean it. I got a beach house in Malibu, and I'm probably gonna hurt your feelings.
Rae Jepsen in Beach House. That song, you can take your headphones off if you want. That song blew my mind when I first heard it. Can we talk? So you're telling me you had an experience on the apps?
Uh-huh.
I guess the Tinders, the Bumbles, the Rayas. We don't have to say which one because I think that's like an endorsement.
We won't.
No, we don't have to do that.
Yeah, it was my sister's fault. She really talked me into it, and loneliness, as I said, causes extreme reactions, and some of those are to do things that you would never think you would ever do. I would have sworn this was not something I would try, but I tried it.
How was it?
It was funny. It was mostly funny, I think, but terrifying too. And then the more that I talked to other friends who had been on these apps, the more hilarity that came in. Like everyone had a horror story. Some people had success, but there was a song idea in there for sure, and I got really excited about that.
Tell me about that. So you're on these apps. You're having good experiences, bad experiences, and you think, I'm going to write a song that the hook is, I got a beach house in Malibu, and I'm probably going to hurt your feelings. And what's the line later on?
I got a lake house in Canada, and I'm probably going to harvest your organs.
Yeah. So you have.
I got a little. Yeah.
That's really funny.
Ham with it for sure.
So you're on these, and that inspires this song?
Yeah. I mean, there had been like I didn't ever actually meet up with anyone, but I had enough conversations to feel like I could see the full picture. There was maybe one or two like walking safe, distant dates that I went on. Sure. Very odd. It was an odd time for all of us. But the point was, I think there was an offer basically from one person who was sort of, had a beach house literally in Malibu, but also had a girlfriend. And I was like, what would be in this for me? Like, I don't understand. So like, you have a beach house, but you're going to hurt my feelings. And I was telling my sister, because she was always the therapy at the end of these hilarious sort of interactions afterwards, to call and to be like, FaceTime became a big thing with me and my family all the time. So I would be like, oh my gosh, like what's in it for me? I got a beach house in Malibu and I'm probably going to hurt your feelings. And I was like, wait. And then I just ran off, and she knows me well enough to be like, oh God, she's doing that thing. She's writing a song again. So
we're going to lose her for a few hours.
Yeah.
Here now.
And so, and then I brought in Alex Hope and Nate Seifert. And I think at first they were like, what's the concept? And I'm like, the concept is people who are in it to play a game, not the people who are in it to find love. I'm not against dating apps, actually. I want to be clear about that. I think that they can be a wonderful and sometimes like easiest, best way to kind of meet some people that might not be in your community. But I think the people who are out there just to kind of play a wicked game with you and play with your feelings, those people need to be called out. And this is what that song is for.
You're goddamn right it is.
Yeah.
You're goddamn right it is. So this brings me to the part I wanted to talk to you about that I feel like your albums up to this point. I want to be clear. The album is called The Loneliest Time. It's not a bummer. It's not a bummer record. And I want to talk about that in a second, that you can write songs that explore loneliness without being sad. Or you can write sad songs that make you dance. I want to talk about that in a second. But before I do, this feels like the first time. I mean, you'd probably have to tell me, but this feels like the first time that I've heard you write in a way that's not as optimistic about relationships.
Yeah. Is that true? I mean.
Does it feel like that?
I think it depends on the song, of course. I think there are songs on the album like Sideways that are very like sugar and sweet and kind of that feeling of new romance for sure. But there are other songs, Go Find Yourself or whatever is a good example, where it is a little bit more spicy for sure.
So your approach to love on this record was a little bit different?
I don't think it was just one thing. I don't think that relationships or my experiences with relationships is just one thing. I don't have like a positive or a negative spin per se. I think that I have experience on my side with the years of my life and the experiences that I've been through. But when I'm going to write a song, I'm not necessarily making a statement of like love is good or love is bad. And this album is not about that. It's just sort of, my perspective and take on it at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an actual snapshot.
Yeah,
of the various emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
You were going through at the time.
Exactly.
Can we listen? Can we listen to Western Wind? Can we do that, Austin? You want to put those headphones back on?
Sure.
I mean, you know what it sounds like, but we can play it for you anyway. That is beautiful. Carly Rae Jepsen, my guest. Mission, right? Mission, British Columbia?
Mission, BC.
Yeah, Mission, BC's own Carly Rae Jepsen from her new album, The Loneliest Time. That's Western Wind. Tell me about writing that song.
That's the most poem-like writing lyrically that I've ever been a part of doing. Almost like free-form writing where you don't think too much about it. This was written with Rostam. Him and I live 15 minutes away from each other. And
Rostam, who used to be in Vampire Weekend, right?
Yeah. But he's got his own project as well. He's one of my favorite voices, actually. He played that piano right there. Oh, yeah. Hey. Mm-hmm. I really, I think that's actually one of the wins of the last couple of years is we've always known each other and like worked together and collabed, but I feel like our friendships really bloomed too. So side note, but I really enjoy working with Rostam and he was a really big part of helping me figure out I think some of the more serious tones of this album. And Western Wind was one of those breakthrough moments for me. I knew as soon as we had finished working on it that it was going to be, in my mind, the perfect first share for just kind of getting people, bringing them down to like the level that I felt like I was on, and then come with some surprises after that. But this song is a little bit kind of, like I say, it's a poem because it's the little fragments of memories for me. That line about take me back into your corner to the center of the room we made a dance floor. I was charmed to let go. It really reminds me of these like living room dance parties that my family had growing up at like a Christmas or any special event or birthday. I had like my cousins lived next door to me actually on my mom's side. So and my uncle was married to a Swedish woman, so we'd have like these dance parties and these great Swedish spreads of food. And we would, as soon as dinner was done, we would move all the couches and tables everywhere, and we would just dance. And we would dance all night. And sometimes people would jam, sometimes people would just play loud music. And I thought this was like normal what people did with their families. So when I'd go to like a boyfriend's house in adulthood and we'd finish Thanksgiving, I'd be ready to like move the furniture so we could start dancing. But I'd realized that like I actually came from a very special and unique family that did this. And I think in the middle of isolation in the last couple of years of being kind of on my own and so away from my family, I was really just reflecting on just the gifts that they had given me in my life and how that actually, even though we were from a distance, that it was still a part of who I was. And I brought that with me everywhere I went. And that's sort of what the line like reminded me of, that it's all connected. It's like a hopeful song. It's about longing and about nostalgia of your childhood memories, but realizing that the people that you love are with you everywhere you go. You,
like a lot of people, like a lot of us, I mean, myself included, during the pandemic, are isolated from the people we love.
We all got real nostalgic, didn't we? Yeah. No, it's true.
And you sort of channel those memories into this song about longing. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of my family has come down to California and been there with me. But I think that what I really realized about one of the ties to my family and to what reminds me of Canada is nature. So I got out a lot. I started walking a lot in California. I started going to the mountains and kind of finding my healing in that time too, during going through some grief and stuff. And it just would remind me of home and my childhood so much, because I actually grew up right in front of this little like mountain at my mom's house. So I had like this whole little forest to play in. And so getting in nature was like a really healing part of like getting back into myself, I think.
Especially when you live somewhere like LA, which is so sprawling and can be, I mean, I know there's nature parts
It's a different kind of nature, for sure.
It's a very intentional nature.
Yeah,
like you have to go to it. You have to find it.
I'll go on like a hike in Los Angeles with like, a friend, and they'll be like, oh, it's so nice. I'm like, I got to take you to Canada and show you what a real hike is like. But okay, this will do. Can
I ask you, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I want to be clear for people who would know you from your songs and the big song, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and and the big records and the big career you've had the past little while. But you're one of the more gifted pop writers of our time. But I think pop is an interesting genre to write in, because I feel like with a lot of genres, if you want to write in metal, it's very clearly defined. You're going to get some variation, black metal, death metal. But the flavors are all going to be very similar. I was just
thinking it would be so hard to do 40 years of metal. It would be very...
Yeah. But you can do that in pop, because in pop music, I feel like you can get how do I put this? You can get hemmed into one style of pop music forever.
Yeah.
And I feel like on this record, when I listened to it, you were playing with a lot of different genres of pop music. Am I onto something?
I think that you speak to like a real truth of mine, which is that I have no interest in having to stay a narrow path of pop. I think what excites me about pop is its endless possibilities, that it is so undefined, especially now. You can kind of have a little like folky pop. You can have some extreme like 90s dance pop. You can play around in the genres. And I really wanted to explore that. I wanted this album to feel like it had variety to it because I have variety in myself. I didn't want to feel like confined to like deliver this one thing. I think especially with like the years of time on my side, I'm like, let's just play now. Let's just play. And I want every album to feel more free to do that, I think.
So you were for a while there feeling like, okay, I have a path that's working for me. I better stick to it. And now you're feeling a little bit more like you can open up?
Well, I think when I made Kiss, if I'm like looking back on it, I think with making Kiss, it was such like an excited, sugary rush into LA and like a quick 6 months to have all this access to these producers. And I had just made my first pop song ever with Call Me Maybe, and they're like, make an album. And I was like, okay. And it was exciting, but I didn't totally know what it was that I loved about pop. And so I was still kind of throwing that all together with my knowledge of folk and like kind of the singer-songwriter background that I had, and having access to these incredible producers that were like dream people to work with. So with Emotion, I definitely took a pause and I asked myself that question of like, what is it that I love about this? What attracts me to it? Because it's not all pop that I like, actually. There's some that I quite don't dislike, to be honest.
We're not going to say any names here.
Yeah, no, but it causes an extreme reaction. I think that is one of the things that I like too, is that it's like a love-hate kind of genre, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so you know what I mean by
awesome.
that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And so I was like, which makes it scary, but it's like exciting if you can figure what that was. So I really loved 80s. So I leaned into 80s so hard with Emotion. And that was really fun to find, and such a support to figure out, that heart on your sleeve stuff is like, that's what pop's supposed to be about. So I think with Dedicated, I just didn't want to lean on 80s only for forever, because I knew that like the 90s had stuff to offer. I knew that I loved the disco. So I was enjoying so I kind of look at Dedicated as like 70s, 80s, 90s and more, like kind of playing. But with this, I didn't want it to be so genre specific versus just like kind of a little bit looser of just like, okay, stop like looking at it as a genre base versus just like thematically what's it about. And that's where I got really excited about this title, The Loneliest Time, and kind of more thinking about the lyrical content, and then trying to find producers who were bringing in different flavors for that. So because I wasn't able to get face to face with a lot of people, one of the like epiphany aha moments I had was like, this sounds so silly, but Zoom for writing. And oh my gosh, people who are now going to have so much availability across the world, who I know like might not normally have time, I can write them a little love letter. I can see who's down. And that led to some incredible meet cutes, from like Bullion in London to Louis of Man in Paris to back to work with Patrick Berger in Sweden. And all of a sudden we got into our flow. It took a second to figure out how to Zoom right together, how to get tracks sent back, or kind of like debate over lyrics in a productive way. But once we got into our flow, it was amazing, actually.
I mean, I love that. I love the idea that you were very intentional, I think in a really good way. I mean, what do I know? But it sounds like you were intentional, like, okay, I don't want to be hemmed in here. There's 70. I want to do this kind of genre-based record. I want to do this kind of genre-based. But now you're like, I got kind of something I want to explore.
Yeah.
In a deeper part of me.
Well, and I think even going into it, I'll be honest, even with the Bullion songs like Ben's, which is a little bit more like journal entry, very close to the heart feelings of just the shock of when you find out someone that you love is gone, and almost wanting to like, tell me this isn't happening. It sounds cute. Do. That's like trying to dissociate sort of stuff. I didn't think I was writing that and then going to share that with anyone. That was something that surprised even me, that when I was bringing it to with my family or my bandmates or my A&R Carlos, they were like, you got to, though. This is something that connects, that other people will have felt, and that's kind of, isn't that the whole point?
You were a little scared?
I was a little scared. Yeah, I still am a little scared, but I think that...
Why?
I always want to be careful, because I think there are songs that are... I think that there's like two parts. This is so weird the way I think about this, and you're going to think I'm a crazy person, but I think there's two parts to a song in my mind of how when they make it like to the point of delivery. One is that it comes from the heart, that it does really feel like it's something I've felt before, that I can imagine and even like fantasize about feeling. One of those two things. That's coming from an authentic type of place, because I think that's where all the spark and magic lies. And I think even more special is when you don't even feel like it's a part of you and like something's kind of being channeled and you're like there to just get it down properly.
100%. That's, you know? You're a vessel for it. Yeah,
like you're in the shower and you're like, grab the phone, I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling. And then afterwards, I do think it's really important to me to think like, who is it for? Is that for me? Or is it like something that connects? Because to me, the magic is like what you get to do at the show when you see someone else singing it, or you see somebody online like kind of like making it theirs, and it's no longer to do with you. You're kind of have to get out of the way almost. That's like the whole magic. That's the whole point of the whole thing. So if I write a song and I feel it, but I'm playing it for 6 people and no one's getting it, it doesn't excite me to then be like, well, put it on because I needed you to understand how I felt on Friday at 6 p.m. because, that doesn't do it for me. It does it for me if both things are feeling like they have potential to work. So that's why I do the listening circles to such an extent with bandmates and stuff, to see what's getting the connection. You still don't know what's going to work for the whole world, but at least I know within my circle of safe people, my bandmates who've been with me for 10 years or more, my family members who I trust, and my A&R who I really rely on, that these are not just songs that were for me, that other people might get them too.
That's so beautiful. The idea that, you are going to write something about yourself and something about your own experiences, but it's important that it touches other people, because otherwise what's it for?
Yeah, exactly.
That's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
That's a nice way of thinking about it. I don't think you're crazy to think that way. I think it's a lovely way of thinking about it. And it's actually nice to hear, because you sound like it's nice to hear you talk intentionally about your music. That's really lovely, you know? Does it feel like it happened to you? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, it does. It does. Although there are, like, I think we were mentioning about this earlier before we started the interview, those little moments or pockets of your life where, like, it was moving so fast that you almost didn't have time to, like, fully process or take it all in. It's almost like there's a little backlog of, like, the computer part of my brain being like, what happened where? Because I'll even have, like, Jared, my keyboard player, sort of mention of, like, remember how much radio we were doing back then? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, sometimes you would knock out 5 radio performances before noon in a day, and then we travel and we do it. And I was like, that seems actually insane to me, but I don't really remember it. I knew a couple things. I was extremely on a high of, you have to understand, this wasn't like this happened to me because I casually one day went into a studio and made a song called Call Me Maybe. I had been hustling since I was 7.
Yeah.
Like if you asked me from age 7 on, what do you want to be? I was like, a singer. Yeah. I was asking.
You did can I say what you did? You did the Canadian Idol thing.
Yeah,
you were looking, you were trying, you were going for it.
I was trying.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember on closing night of my high school production of Little Orphan Annie, crying to my parents very dramatically, being like in my small town of Mission, BC, Canada. And the night was over, and I was for 7 days in a week, I got to go out and be the star Annie. And I remember crying to my parents and being like, what if I'm just this child star? They were like, nobody knows who you are. What are you talking about? Like, what if I peaked?
What if I peaked at 16 in Annie?
Like, no.
So you were hustling.
But I guess my point is this is a passion of mine. I couldn't believe it. So it didn't matter if you had told me to do 14 interviews in one day. It didn't matter what the ask was. I was happy to be there. The answer was always yes. I was a little workhorse, but I was just like living my actual dream. And
you had a hit song like no one gets a hit song. Call Me Maybe got big in a way that it's hard to imagine songs getting big anymore, you know?
I did feel very... this is what I'm happy for in like retrospect. There wasn't a moment where I didn't feel extremely aware of my luck in it. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
It's a good song.
Well, thank you. But there's a lot of good songs. And I knew that. So I felt very struck by lightning. I felt like there was a lot of things going on. And it's good to also understand how much it doesn't matter, because a good song is a good song. It takes a lot of things lining up and a lot of preparation. When I would go to those interviews and they would be like, oh my gosh, your first song and a big hit, you're like, the amount of things that I had to do to line up to have the opportunity to hear this one. Yeah. Even on my side, there was a lot going on, but I knew that I wasn't the only person doing that. I was very, very lucky. And so because of that, I think there was no way I was going to say like no to a thing. I was just like hustling in it. But I think that's also why when you pendulum swing sort of that experience versus the luxury that I have now of getting to take my time with an album, getting to really enjoy the process of making an album and put time into why each song is there on an album, and to also just take focus away from a song and the beauty and artwork of an album. I know albums are kind of dated ideas, but I'm in love with an album
artist to me.
Yeah.
You are an album artist.
Oh, thank you.
You know? And I think that was hard. Like, I think it's easy for someone to be a singles artist. Sorry, I don't think it's easy to be anything.
But
I think you could have been a singles artist. And I think people get excited about your albums in a way that I don't see many people get excited about albums.
Well, that means a lot to me because I feel like I put a lot into them. It becomes a little bit of an obsession.
When you go through the period that you went through where you were stopping for a little while, you were baking, or you were, making tea, or you were making ugly scarves, I think you told me.
It wasn't just that. It sounds really trivial when it's like, and then I sewed. There were other things going on.
And you were also meeting people, and you were making records. What I mean by that is you, if it wasn't for the pandemic, you might have never stopped. And once you did stop, and once you sort of like came to some comfort with that, is there anything you're taking from that time with you now? Like, you know what I mean by that?
Loads of things. Yeah. I think one of the big things is a little bit of a life lesson for me that I'm still learning. So I'm not like a pro in this, and I'm not preaching anything. I'm just in the middle of it still. But I think in that time, looking back at like the Call Me Maybe era, or even the Go 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 pace that I can kind of pick up into since then, there's this really helpful little trick that I learned of like the switch off button. I'm explaining this terribly, but try to follow me here.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You might feel this with performing, where you're having a terrible day, or something's going off, or you just had a fight with your dad, or something's happened, and then you have to go perform. And it's really great if you can then press the switch off button and kind of be present and do the thing that you need to do. And it's a really valuable skill to have for me if I'm going to go and perform or do a thing and I got a lot going on, or maybe I feel sick, but I switch off how you feel in your body, switch off, just go do the thing. And I think I probably know how to do it to a higher extent because it's been so vital on the regular. And one of the things that I really had time to do was be off. And to be off was so interesting to me, how much I had backlogged of stuff that I hadn't dealt with, or breakups, things I had to go through, or different things to kind of, it doesn't go away. It's just like kind of waiting for you, I guess is my point. And so as I move forward in my career, as the pace picks up again, one of the lessons that I've learned is it's good to know when to switch off the button, to do the show, even if, you feel a little off or whatever, but to make time in the day, every day, to switch back into yourself again, to be off. And I don't mean off as in like terrible. I mean like connected to your body, to know what's going on. And so for those things, I've really started practicing like things like meditation. I really started getting into more health, about just being aware of like how I'm treating myself and my body, kind of prioritizing that in a different way. And my relationships with my family, like really actively working on them, because they do take work, especially if you live from a distance. So these sound like trivial things, but they're life-changing things for me. And it's changed the way I even look at like making sure I'm tapped into like the joy of my job, because it's one thing to do the thing and feel like you're doing it and like you get a thing done, even like a show, and you're just like relieved that it didn't go bad, instead of being like joyful that it went well. And I really am trying to tap into that more and more. That's
beautiful, and it's not trivial. It's all life is. That's as Bob Dylan said, it's life and life only. That's beautiful, Carly.
Thanks.
Really, really nice talking to you.
Lovely talking to you.
I love having you in here.
I love talking to you always.
Thanks for coming in. Carly Rae Jepsen was my guest. Congrats on the new record.
Thank you.
Her new album is called The Loneliest Time. It is out everywhere, October 21st.